So with
Good
that,
to know.
we have
Hi.
Katie from Illuminate. Let's give her a
I
warm
know.
welcome. And she can
Thank
tell
you.
us about
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, my name is Katie Nipper, and I am an implementation manager and working with all of your sites. So when we do rollout, I'm still going to be the person that does most of the trainings, although we do have some subject area experts. So if we roll out certain modules, either they might come along or help out with that. Sometimes it's timing too, right? When everybody has a similar school calendar, and actually that might benefit you guys a little bit. Sometimes our trainings get a little impacted. But other than that, you'll see me for most of the trainings. I live in Simi Valley, so I'm not that far. And against traffic, which is always a fun. I actually really enjoy coming out here. I work with Lancaster and Palmdale and Wilsona and Keppel and a lot of the Antelope Valley schools. So I was mentioning that after becoming the implementation manager, I've seen Learn for Life signs everywhere. And I think I've driven by every site. And it's kind of interesting to be, like you see that commercial and you say, oh, I've never seen that car before. And then all of a sudden it's everywhere. So you guys really are pretty widespread. I actually, learning a little bit more about your mission and who you service. I have a stepson that's 17, senior in high school. He has been close to a failing student for many years, very much struggles in the traditional setting, but has also not wanted to he doesn't want to lose his social circle. So he will graduate with, mom and dad's really hard work. But I could see how if he didn't have some parents at home that were really trying to be on him on a regular basis, some other outlet for him of some non-traditional way would have been the way to go for sure. And it's fun as an educator to realize how many opportunities there are out there that aren't just the regular track for kids that need it, or pregnant moms, or different things like that. I volunteered with, I started my teaching career in East LA, so in LA Unified, as a classroom teacher and then literacy coach before moving on to work with first ORS and then Illuminate. So I come from that, not a programming background, and really from that data analysis side, from literacy particularly, but having walked my stepson through Algebra 1 step by step, I had to watch a few Khan Academy videos myself to remember how to do some of those. So I'm excited to be with you because I feel like your program really offers so much for so many kids that, he's a smart kid, but the tools are not as easy for him to access in a traditional setting. So, as Chris mentioned, sort of today is the big overview. Let's see if that'll come back up. We have a lot of different modules in Illuminate, and we can pick and choose when to turn them on. Today we're going to be in a demo site that is a traditional school. So we'll see like the district, the site, the teacher level, so that might not apply as much. But in viewing those reports, you can kind of get some ideas on what would work best for you and how we see that structure. We also have student groups, so we can group students in different ways. So you'll see quite a few different modules. I'll have you dig around live. But this is in anticipation of what does the rollout look like, so you guys have a little more informed background on what we saw today that would work for your initial rollouts, and then what maybe you want to hold off on or don't need to go to yet. So informational pieces for sure. And can I ask, where did you work with Illuminate?
Valor Academy.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So you're out in the Simi Valley area-ish.
Yeah, we were in the valley over there.
too. So we have one expert in the room.
It's been 2 years since I've used it, but I could refamiliarize myself.
Right. It'll all come flooding back. So that'll be a good tool, because sometimes, just seeing, oh, well, 5 months down the road, this is what we ended up with after we had some data in the system. Having that idea and a contact will be a great piece. So just a little bit of, again, what we were mentioning, kind of thinking of the priorities for implementation and kind of broad spectrum. This is a little bit about Illuminate. Most of our employees, with the exception of the developers, have been educators in some respect. It might be in a technology department, it might be even superintendents. We have even our support specialists, quite a few of them have been teachers themselves. So really have worked with students ourselves. Again, like I said, with the exception of the developers, and you know, that's a whole different world. I couldn't do what they do, they're amazing. And this is our mission statement that we're continually trying to strive for and remind ourselves when we create new technology, that how are we using this to promote student and educator success? And so that might be something to think about too. How are we promoting that in Learn for Life academies? Promoting the student success, but also the educator success of learning what programs worked well, what should we replicate, maybe what didn't. So before I have you do this, I'm trying to, I was organizing with Summer the flow of our agenda, and I'm going to give you a test first today. And one reason I want to do that is I'm going to give you a test as if you're a student, taking an online assessment with items from the item bank. So tomorrow we're doing an assessments training, starting to dive deep into how to create assessments and use that. But if you think about the Smarter Balanced assessment students are taking nowadays, how many different item types, how many different structures does each question have? Sometimes it's multi-part, sometimes it's just the directions that are difficult for them and not necessarily the content. So I want to show you a variety of different item types for their online testing. To take that from not just being paper pencil, but how do we capture that online, and then what's everything we can do with it. And we'll look at some local data first from the test you took, because sometimes that's more helpful than looking at other data that we don't know what's behind the question. But it's a mix of language arts and math, and you're going to be an anonymous student. So let me pull in your login and think of the easiest way to do this. I'm going to have you and I'll take you through some of these steps as well. So I'm going to have you go to testing.illuminateed.com. There's 2 E's, illuminateed.com. And I had a quick access link, but I decided not to take you to the agenda yet. If you hit enter, do you get to this page without a code yet?
No.
Okay. Give me one more. You might need to put in the auth quick code. Let me double check. All right. It does for this particular one. Let's see if I can make that any bigger. Put in the rest of that URL. And let's see if I have, make that a little bit bigger for you to see. That was too big. Is that big enough? Testing.onlineed.com. And I'm going to show you a few different tools with this once we get in live. But because I changed around and I'm not having you log in as a teacher yet, it doesn't have some of our shortcuts in there. Did anyone need help with that? You got to that point? Okay, I'll help out. And if you have, anyone need this? We are. Testing.illuminateed.com. Yes. And normally, and students wouldn't need to use this, but again, some of the quick codes I have on our actual login. Yes, that is going to be your student login. Let's see. All right, will you put the auth/quick question access code?
So put that whole thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me.
Oh, it was the other one. I did a long one and then it. There it was. This is the one I did earlier.
Illuminateed.com. And we're going to go off.
Oh,
And
here,
then quick.
it was there a second ago. It was down there. Because I already did all this. And it took me to that one that I just showed you. Let's see what.
Let's hit enter with that.
Oh,
and
just
see
that
if-
one?
See if that gets us closer.
Oh, there you
Okay. And then you can do the access code that's up there. It's up on the screen. Mm-hmm. Anyone else need help getting to that initial site? So your student code is this little slip of paper I gave you.
This one. Okay, gotcha.
And if you don't have one, let me know. I'll get you logged in. Students will have a username and password, or they can have a quick code like this. Anyone else need a login? Okay. So I'm going to log in. It's the student ID is what it is for our demo site. And once you log in, you will see what your name is. You might have one you recognize, or it might be some strange demo site name. But there are some celebrity names in there, so you might have one of those. Then you're going to confirm, and you have a 13-question test. I did not randomize. You don't need sound. It will give you the option because I turned on the text-to-speech, but you don't need it to start out. And if we all play it at the same time, you'll see what happens with that. So to begin test, you click the begin test. And before I let you go and actually answer some of these, I want to talk through some of the tools we have. I turned on all the tools. Most of the time, you're going to pick and choose. For instance, like the text-to-speech, only if students have accommodations would they necessarily need to have that on. There are other tools like a calculator or a Desmos calculator, a protractor, that you won't necessarily need to use in any of these, but I wanted to show you the tools that are available. And if the item types call for it, they'll already be included. So, but again, I just wanted to give you the demo of what all of the different options are, including graphing calculator, scientific calculator. I'll scroll back out to my main size and turn those tools off. So you click once, click it again. If you were doing the text-to-speech, you could play that. There is slow, normal, and fast for the text-to-speech, so they get to choose as well. How you advance to the next question is either the pull-down menu or you select next. On the right-hand side, you do have the option to strike out the distractors that are probably not the correct answer, and then make your choice of the correct answer. You also have a notepad that you can keep notes on the side and flag questions. And then if you want to come back, you can see when we review and finish, you'll be able to see which questions you flagged, and you'll be able to go back to those. So those are just some of the options. Don't hit review and finish until you're done with all of them. I would have to, as I have it set up, I would have to log you back in. Students sometimes do that, and we would need to reset theirs. But I'm going to let you just play around with each of these items. You will see that some are drag and drop. Some are constructed response. I'm going to ask you to also enter some kind of text in there, but don't necessarily read the whole passage. This is just for experience, not for actually testing you on these skills. So let's take a good, maybe between 5 and 10 minutes, probably 10 minutes on taking the assessment. I didn't randomize the order. Depending on the test, you might do that. It definitely helps with students looking on. When the items are randomized, it's actually the distractors within it that are randomized. So everyone will still get question 1, same question, but the distractors will all be mixed up. So it is quite hard to cheat off of each other with that. All right, so I'll give you a few minutes to do that. I just want to show you from the teacher view, you have a lot of options for live proctoring. So in this dash view, I can see student names. It's green if it's correct, red if it's incorrect with their answer choices. You also have options to make it anonymous, switch this around. I can go into each question and see if I weren't doing it anonymous, see exactly which kids are answering which questions. If you see here, I have this option to enable help. Now you'll end up having a help button too, and it will notify me if you need help, and I can come assist you with that or contact you. If we are doing, let me see which question might have that in. Even in your constructed responses, I can see all of your, see, we've got a couple. Justin Bieber needs help. Yes, we know that one. Mustafa. So I can say, yes, I've acknowledged you. I'm going to come over and help you with what you need. Yeah, question.
Can the students give themselves the code name so they could look and see whether or not they got it right, but the other students wouldn't?
So give me more information on what you're looking for with that.
Like if you wanted to do a, say like a quick, like a informal check for understanding, and you asked the question, every student responded, and you wanted them to know whether they got it correct, so maybe you could display that screen, but you didn't want the other students to be able to know who got it right or wrong?
There's quite a few different tools that we could use for a quick check. One of them is a scanning piece that I can show you too. In here, there wouldn't be a way for them to know without that, but at the very end, I have the option to, so it wouldn't be per question, but at the end of the test, I have the option of giving them their answer key, and it would tell them you answered B, but the correct answer was C. So if it were like a 5-question quick, that would pretty much be live information. And I can also set a date. So yes, let them see it, but only let them see it from today, from this time to this time. Or because I'm going to give it to my next group of students maybe, and I don't want them to have all the answers. Or don't show them the answer key and just tell them their total score. So in that respect, they would be able to see all of their different answer choices. In a longer test, that might not be what you were looking for, but not one question, answer, just at the end of the test. Good question. So before you move on too quickly, let me show you just a couple different views. You can also see an aggregate view, which gives you, okay, many students only chose C. So if we were doing, let's say, question by question, and I knew that this was they needed to choose more than one correct answer, this is probably the item type that students get most incorrect on an assessment. If I had paused everybody, which I can do, so we could do questions and then pause, then I would be able to say, let's go back, let's read those directions again. So if this weren't necessarily a test in a more formative way, and we were using this really for instruction, we could be doing that and just discussing it as we go. The administrations panel. Just wanted to, oh, and this is taking us to, I didn't want to show you this yet. Secret. Administered students. So this is another something, especially with maybe your homeschool students and things, where you can see when did they start, when did they finish, how long did it take them, if they took any pauses. So, you know, I notice you're starting at 2 a.m. Let's talk about your schedule, or something like that. We can also set the schedule when they have to take it, but this is helpful to see. This is where we could also reset if they needed to, if they forgot to submit it, or we wanted to enable text to speech, or pause just one student. We could do that within this panel too. So I'll let you keep going until you finish, and then I'm going to show you, we actually had a release this morning of live proctoring 2.0. So I'll give you a little preview of that in just a second. Let's go ahead and submit. So hit review and submit. And before we look at some of the results, I want to show you the live proctoring 2.0. So as I mentioned, it was released last night. So there's some pieces in there that I haven't really used yet, except in our QA sites. So we're going to play around just a little bit, but it's some exciting new pieces. So for instance, on this panel, you'll see it looks a little bit different. You have some more interaction. Rather than having to change screens, you have it right from here where I might need to interact with a student. Already see an overall score. I can quickly open question 1. There's also some other little codes under here. So started filter, who's finished, who's paused. So I have a lot of different just tools and options. I can see it by students or by questions. So I can pretty quickly kind of flip through each of those as we saw before. Same thing again where I have the option to do it by ID or anonymous. One of the things that's new with this in the anonymous is it used to, while it made it anonymous, if you knew that your student ID was first, you could still tell that yours was first, but now it actually rotates them each time you go to a new question. So it would be really hard to identify which kid was which if you were using the anonymous in this newer version. Sometimes they get really crafty at figuring out who got the questions correct and incorrect. So we can do a little bit more sorting where we didn't have those tools before. And this is the big piece here. We have a pacing mode. So if we were This would, again, lead to that instructional piece where I can say, okay, do question 1. We're going to stop and review it together, and you can't go ahead of me because I have us in pacing mode rather than all together. Reveal mode basically is not until we see how students have done, and I think we need to be actually in the middle of it. Answer hide mode. So I know that everybody got it correct and one person got it incorrect, but I still don't know what the correct answer is. Whereas in our previous one, it said A and B, but we knew that was wrong. So we had some different tools there. The pause, force finish, just some different things that make it really easy to use, but the reveal, the answer hide, and the pacing are probably going to be your tools that you use quite a bit now with this newer version. And you can turn on all of those at once. And I've got to double check that reveal mode, but essentially you can see how this could be a great teaching tool as you're going through question by question. Now, once we navigate away from, let's talk about the assessment just a little bit before we move. Did you have any questions on the questions?
Questions on the question?
Yeah, like item types. For instance, item type 12, right? A drag and drop.
Actually, I did have a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way, because when I did it on my tablet, I couldn't see the answers and the boxes at the same time. So I had to scroll up and down to drag them slowly up.
Sometimes it has to do with whether you've zoomed in or zoomed out.
Okay.
So not always on the tablet, but you can, like I can zoom out within this one and definitely see that. Making the panel, and sometimes it's what's turned on and what's turned off, larger or smaller. In this drag and drop, and I would say it probably is just going to be a zoom for this particular version.
Okay.
Can you switch them? Like if I have one already in, can I pop it in another one and just swap?
Yes. So you can like start them all out and then rearrange. It's basically kind of like a text overlay.
Yeah, it doesn't swap them automatically. You have to drag the other one out from underneath it.
Mm-hmm. So if they layered them all on top, that might be a little bit confusing, but.
Can you narrow down the types of questions there are? So drag and drop instead of 12 different options?
Absolutely.
5 different styles?
Absolutely. And that's probably what you're going to end up seeing a lot. The Smarter Balance still uses a lot of multiple choice, but multiple choice in different respects. Maybe multiple correct answer rather than single correct answer. So they will have interaction with some of the different item types, and really my goal was to show you all of them, but I would not expect, especially like, you know, you're probably not going to have those evidence-based constructed response that are mostly in language arts, also with graphing items and things like that. So probably 5 is a good reasonable, but when we talk through assessments tomorrow with the team, I'm going to show how do we filter all those out, and let's make sure we're not just doing multiple choice, because that's where they'll get caught up probably. Any other questions on navigating those items? Yes?
I tried the answer strike through button a bunch of times and I never saw it actually cross anything out. Are there certain items that would have worked on?
In the multiple choice, so let's go back to
Like the very first one. I
question 1.
would cross one out, but it didn't.
So once you select it, you do have to click on it to select it first, and then click on the answer choice to do the strikeout. So if it's not green, then it isn't doing the strikeout. Yeah, and so these will be some that we'll just have to practice with students too, right? Is, like we said, the navigating of the technology, but we are trying to mirror their experience in Smarter Balance so that we can get to the content information more, and this isn't as difficult or new features to show them because they've had experience practicing it with the content they're learning every day. So any last questions on that one, on those? Okay, so let's go over, let's say we finished the test. My teacher has been doing the live proctoring, and then we're going to go back to, let's see. I'm going to say log in from scratch just to show you what this would look like as a teacher coming back to the assessment. So let's say it's the next day and I want to go in and score my assessment. Here in live proctoring, this is showing me that the window is still open for my test. And so this little symbol, notification icon, just like on your phone, it's letting you know you have one test that's open that there are scores for. So if you want to live proctor, it will take you to a shortcut and you can go in there. So we can talk a little bit more about how to get to that in a minute. And then constructed response. So we had some in there that were constructed response items. One thing you'll notice when you go to the assessment, so I'm going to show you going to the assessment and the immediate scores you get. And if you haven't done the constructed response, then you will end up noticing that your scores are probably not as high as they should be. So that's another reason we have that notification icon on there for the constructed response. Here's the other tool also with too many demo sites. Let's make sure I'm in the right person. Okay. So here is the next time you come back into an assessment, you're quickly going to see our overview report. And so this is how many students have scored in each of these scoring bands. Prior to that little tile that we call constructed response with the notification on, you could get to this and say, oh my goodness, did my students really score this way? Big hint, you probably haven't scored all your constructed response yet. So we need to do that because that's going to change these scores quite a bit. So we'll come back to this report in just a second. But what I wanted to display here is that you do have an overall breakdown. As we scroll down, we see the number of students, and we can click into that and get all of the student names and how each student scored. I have quite a few different question group items turned on, so we can see for constructed response, how did we do? I haven't scored any of them. So obviously we didn't do well yet because I haven't scored any of them. So that's another hint, but it does let you know 100% of students did not meet that standard. Multi-part questions, drag and drop. So this would be under different item types. You'll also be able to see it by depth of knowledge levels, anything that you would like to be able to monitor. And these question groups are also question groups that you can customize. So it might not look like this and you would probably never have all of these turned on. It could be operations in base 10, and that's one of the question groups you're looking at and say, how did we do that versus number sense. So looking at those groups. Did you have a question?
I did. So I had worked with this program when it was data director when I was in the classroom, and the performance bands were aligned to the CST. is the default aligned to SBAC performance bands in terms of mastery, or how does that work?
So right now in this demo site, they are just our default bands, which are not necessarily aligned. Every grade level is going to be a little bit different for the CAS performance bands. So that's something we can customize and decide, do we want to go exactly with those for each grade level, a generic version? I'll show you right now this answer key. If we went over to the setup and we look at the performance bands, this is set up using standard exceeded, standard met, nearly met, and not met. So we're using the language of Smarter Balanced CASP, but these cut scores are not identical. Something else that key data systems are the authors of the items in the item bank, the Inspect item bank. They will also do a free correlation to give us suggestions on, based on our students and the tests we've created, what do you recommend for cut points? So they will also do that. But these are generals, you know, without being as specific.
So if you wanted it to be a direct predictor of CAS performance, you'd want to reset those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they can be per test, or yes, they can be per test. There is going to be a district default, and so each time you create a new test, it'll just be at that default unless you change it. But they can definitely be changed. And they can even be changed within, so you could have a different overall percent correct performance band versus each of the standards within there as well. So let me go back to that overview. Just another, so something you might be using quite a bit is the standard performance. So looking at each standard and getting more information on how the students performed. It's automatically going to give you the lowest performing at the top. And we'll get into some of the reports on this in just a minute. This overview page is really just one of the reports available, but it says question 5, we struggled on the most. That's probably a constructed response, so we're going to come back to that in a second. Question 7, we did quite well. Let's take a look. When I open up question 7, I can see the exact question and what the input answer was and any other information on that. And we also have subgroup achievement gaps. So this will be helpful, maybe not necessarily as a small class section, but when you're starting to look at it for your large populations. These are the subgroup achievement gaps that the state is looking at. So automatically we'll get this information from your student information system on a nightly update of students. So if they fall in these groups, we'll be able to see how do they count against the group as a whole. So just as a quick overview of that, let's go back into, as a for instance, I logged back in. I have constructed response items that I need to score. I'm going to go ahead and click on that assessment, and it's going to take me straight to the scoring. So this is something else in the assessment creation as well, of how much time do you have to score those constructed response items also. We want to give the opportunity, but if you have a 13-question test and it's all constructed response, it's going to take the teacher quite a bit of time to read through each of those, right? So as we're balancing out all of those different item types with the content. So let me show you, let's see, I think it was it question 5 we had been talking about? So here's one of the true constructed response as we're going in and looking at, this is what the student wrote. I'd give him 2. So we can then give them a score of a 0, 1, or 2. In the question, clearly, yes. We need to score everyone a 2. In the question info, you're actually going to get the rubric with suggested responses and the criteria. So does he give sufficient evidence? And here's a sample answer that would be a 2, and all of the other metadata that goes with those items. The other option you have here is that you can annotate this as well. So I can highlight and I can annotate within. And if the student is looking at this in their student portal, they're going to see all of your teacher annotations also. Yes, question?
Can I have seen that rubric when I was completing the question?
No. The students will not see the rubric, just the teachers.
Is there a way to show that, and that rubric, we'd be creating that? Would we construct the responses?
The items are already have rubrics attached. So if you use the item bank that already exists, the Inspect Item Bank, there's about 80,000 items. Those all have rubrics already attached if they're constructed responses. But you can write your own items also and use them on the same tests.
Are those rubrics SBAC aligned?
Yes.
Okay, so if we do calibration with teachers.
Definitely. Yeah, they spend a lot of time each year also testing their items and validating against our students did these on this, did this well on our items. Are there any that didn't fit into that with how well they did on CASP? And so they will reevaluate that and take items out and put items in each year. Yes?
Is there any way to get the rubric without the examples? Like just the bullets of what each score means?
In the test creation, there's a lot of different views to see the rubric. In this view, there is not. It's basically you see the entire question. You see everything about it.
Consortium website for those though, just the rubric templates.
Is that if we were using the SBAC rubrics, it's going to align with what is on in Illuminate?
Yes. So Inspect are the all of the items are authored by Key Data Systems. So they're a company that's in like Temecula area. They have been writing items for I believe it's now maybe 15 years. First, mainly for CST, but obviously now been smarter balanced. So each year they look at the blueprint for smarter balance and all of the test items and all of the criteria. So all of their item writers write using that criteria for each of those items that are, so it's very SBAC aligned, both the item types and then also the content within that. And that's where you'll also see all of this metadata at the bottom, letting you know these are the depth of knowledge levels, this is the difficulty level, what are we looking at? There's even Bloom's taxonomy in there if you needed that information. So those are all in that SBAC alignment piece. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I have one more follow-up on that.
Sure.
For the metadata that you just showed, is there a way, or is there already, is there a way to, I'm trying to, sorry. If we create an assessment that we want to directly align to the SBAC blueprint in terms of DOK and item type, is there a way to sort by all of those so we could do that?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Every one of those pieces of metadata, there is a filter for when you're creating the tests. So you can say, show me only DOK level 3 items. And then pick and choose and then say, now I need a couple DOK 2s and DOK 1s. So you can filter each of those. There's also pre-built assessments where the company has already done that for you and gives you a full blueprint and you can copy those. So that's one thing we'll probably talk about is having a starting place and then make a copy and adjust as you need rather than starting from scratch because they've done a lot of that work already. And those come with 4 interims and also, or 3 interims and a final summative. Yeah.
Note that.
In here, yeah, let me see if I can scroll that in a little bit bigger. So in each of those claims and targets, yes. So that's where it becomes pretty important to look at those items before just thinking, oh, I want to write my own. The difficulty of getting all of that information analyzed and in there is not always the easiest. But sometimes you want to add one extra yourself and ask. And so you can do that. You can add one more that goes with the same passage that you wanted to get even more depth and you couldn't find an item like that. So you have the flexibility to do that as well. So I can also answer give the student a comment. Let me, scrolling in and scrolling out here so you can see, but I don't want to make it too small. So as I move down, I can see what different answers there were. I have quite a few different options. So as teachers see, maybe reading through each of them and then scoring them. If you take a look at my screen here, where I scored a 2, if I needed to score all my students, let's say this was a practice and I just wanted to give them 2s, or I read through already and then I want to come back and score, I do have capabilities of lots of fill downs to make it easier. I can see it by student, all of their answer choices. I can see it by grid. So I do have a lot of tools to be able to see all of the different items and score them. Most of the time, you won't be using this for any of the computer scored items, right? It's really just the constructed response that you're going to need to see. So let's say question 5 again. Here's a view where if you know the rubric already and you wanted to see all students' responses at once, you can also do that there. And then score them as needed. And then back to our overview, and we have our basic reports, and even just making sure, and there were some other constructed response items right now, but so far this is what I have. You'll notice that our overall performance we've done better now that I actually have some scores in for our constructed response. Any questions on those so far? Okay. So I'm actually going to, yeah.
So we took the computer-based test, but we can use tests on paper. Okay.
You can. And you're going to be limited from the item types you choose if you want to do it on paper, like the drag and drop, and some of those are not going to be available online. But as you create the test, you get to see which item types they'll have a pencil if they're paper-based, computer if they're online. Most of them are both until you get to some of those technology-enhanced items. You'll also get warnings if you try to print it out that says, not all these items will work on a paper-based. Are you sure you want to do this? So you will have those options. But live proctoring, scoring their answers right away and seeing them, that's not going to show up on a paper-based version.
So
Yeah.
after a student, if the student did the computer-based one and maybe the constructed response or the writing part isn't scored yet, will it give the student feedback right away on their score without that portion?
Yes. Once you scan in the information, it's going to it'll score all the computer-based answers,
Right.
and it'll look like they have zeros for the constructed response until you go in and update that information.
So it can give them a score right away.
Yes.
Like I press finish and I said, oh, I got an 80%.
I can show you what that looks like with the scanning. I did bring all my scanning so we can take a look at. You can also give students, let's say most of them took it online, but a few had to take it paper pencil. All those scores will go into the same report. So yeah, sometimes that happens where they don't have a device or internet or something went wrong and they needed to do paper pencil. So I'll show you the scanning, but it's pretty simple for them to do that as well. Just drop it in a box.
We opted out of the scanning piece, that hand
Okay.
scored scanning, we just did it for the online version, with the online assessments.
So what does that mean?
So you're talking about the picture scanning, right? For like the
Right. It's all included in. There's no extra fees, I believe. Well, what were you talking?
you're talking about like the phone scanning and stuff with the paper base.
So I have to check the contract on that because
There is, we opted just to do for online.
just the online. Okay.
So
Because the goal is to digitize all this.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, so we opted out of not doing
So
that.
basically, if I understand it, there's two ways that students can access the test and we can get the data into Illuminate. One, they can just do a regular paper and pencil, Scantron, whatever type of assessment, and then we can do a scan, which the technology works really well from what I've seen, and then you get the data into the system. So what's great about that is if your current users, teachers and students are used to doing paper tests, the learning curve to be able to utilize the functionality of Illuminate is really low. Teachers and kids can do exactly what they're doing. You can get all the data in there. So that's the value added of going that route. The value in my mind of actually having the computer-based assessments is that all standardized testing has basically gone computer and in many cases adaptive. And so at some point we need to get our kids and teachers moved over to online assessment platforms because every standardized test that they're doing in the foreseeable future is going to be on that platform.
Right.
So the question I have is, what type of a transition is reasonable? If everybody's comfortable with our gradual phasing of Illuminate only doing online assessments, and then over the next several years we can normalize online assessments program-wide via Illuminate, I think that would be the best choice. If we need to give some teachers and students the scan option to help bridge them over, I think we can talk about that. But since we want to get to computer-based tests, and with our regular curriculum, it's paper-based tests, to me the transition could be as we gradually replace our current assessments with Illuminate assessments, those would be online assessments and be part of our 2 or 3 year transition. So that's something we can talk about.
There is the
Scanning function has to be done via Scantron,
Yeah.
correct?
no.
No. Or is it can't just be paper.
Plain paper. And then there is the option too to print out the test booklet and enter the scores manually. So if you did have that one student that maybe I'm trying to think of what their use case would be. Maybe it's visual impairment or something where they wouldn't be taking it online. You could enter the scores manually. So there are other options too for getting the data in there.
So that place depends upon what volume that needs to be managed at. So we can talk about that. So it's not a matter, we can get whatever functionality, and adjust the agreement if we need to, but organizationally we want to move towards online assessments at whatever pace is reasonable.
And keep in mind too that you are limiting your item types if you try to do paper. And it's those other item types, right, those technology enhanced item types that are probably, they haven't really come across in the past, and so they're struggling with those. So having more of those available.
That's what we found is the bigger learning curve than the content is the technology literacy. So,
Right.
yes, they get access to that for sure.
Yeah, the more practice we have, and you can get to the knowledge in so many different ways. All right, so let's go ahead and get started again. And this time I'm going to have you log in. We do have logins for you and your own site, and we're going to get to those before we leave today. But I wanted to make sure that we have some report data to look at. So that's why we're going to log into the demo site. And this will be available and you can continue using it if you want to as well. So demo.illuminateed.com. The username is demo123 and the password is 123demo. Now when you log in, it's going to ask you,
Could you go back to these slides?
yeah. Did everyone see that all right? And if somebody comes in that's sitting next to you and doesn't have it, you get to share that information with them. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and log in myself. And just to give you from that same experience, when you logged in, it asked you which site. So we do have different access levels, obviously. If you're a teacher user, it already knows your site and it's going to take you straight to your rosters. So you won't have this. This is because we're actually an administrator at 2 different sites. And demo site, trying to give you just some experience around. But you might have people that do have, I'm at 3 different sites versus I need to see the entire, all the different sites. So this is why we have the option to choose one. I'm going to choose Maslow Elementary to start. So if you guys would do that as well. 123 demo. It is. I was trying to make it easy, yet it still wants enough characters that it's not too easy. So if you had gotten, if you already went in and you went in as the high school and you want to switch back and follow us, it's under the control panel is where we can switch the schools. So I'm in Maslow Elementary. And when we, as I mentioned, we have logins for your Learn for Life site, but we don't have all the students in yet. So I wanted to take a look at some of the reports that you'll see down the road, but we'll give you your logins and you'll have that before you leave. You'll be able to see creating assessments and things like that, but you won't have all the functionality because we're still merging, getting that initial data upload of the students with all their demographics. So we're using this one as the demo instead. You notice at the top, there is what we call a bulletin across the top, and it has our agenda for the day. And if you click on that link, it'll take you to our Google Doc agenda. So we'll be giving out your information, as I said, and here's some shortcut links. If you have other questions that are coming up since we've started, you can add them now or add them later. It's just a pretty simple Google Doc that gives your name, your site, and your question or concern. And so I'm sharing this with Summer and Chris to help us navigate, your individual questions, whether they're Illuminate specific or not. Feel free to ask those in that doc. And why I wanted to come over here is just sort of show you that in these tools, I have links to all the help docs. We started with online testing mainly because we really wanted to get into looking at what the students would experience as we're moving to online and have some reporting available. We're going to next move into a basics of the Welcome to Illuminate, how we can customize what your site looks like. I'll go pretty quickly through those. And then I want to show you the CASP reports and the CELT reports, just as an idea of some of the different reporting capabilities. And then we can dig deeper into one other thing I'd like to show you is the different testing options besides just the item bank, so I can give you a little sample of what some of those would look like. So as a for instance, if you click on this welcome, it'll take you over to our help docs. This one should not take it. Oh, that's taking you to my PowerPoint. Sorry, in the basic navigation help menu takes us over to our help docs. So just giving you a little bit of information. I'm not going to read through the help docs, but I want you to have access to this later when we say, I can't remember what that was for or what we clicked on. These help docs are something I use on a daily basis also to help communicate, because they're step by step through each piece. And sometimes there's little short embedded videos. So let's move over. I'm going to go back to my Illuminate site. And let's talk through some of the basic navigation. So when you're on the Illuminate logo, if you click on that, if you've clicked anywhere else, it'll always take you right back into the tiles page. So this is our basic tiles page. And I'm going to scroll out just a little bit here, make that viewable for you. These tiles are all customizable depending on what we include. So attendance, this is just in the demo site now. That wouldn't be something that you would be taking in Illuminate, but we can always put in links out to where teachers would take attendance if that is something you want to use. These can be links to something within Illuminate or outside of it. There's some basics here, like create an assessment, view your assessments list, view favorites. That will be a way that we could organize district. Let's say you are going to do an Algebra 1 test system-wide, then that could be something we mark as a favorite and give a shortcut for everybody to have a quick access to. In this bottom right-hand corner is an edit layout option where you can add different tiles. So for instance, we have some more system tiles at the bottom, like constructed response that we had in the view I showed you before, give a test online. I'm going to show grade with camera. So we have some different tools we could add there. So you'll be able to customize yours however you'd like to use it. And again, we can also make some custom links. So I'll just give you a quick preview of that. If we wanted to say make the help docs even easier to find or direct all of the users to it, we could make an outside link. And I'm going to grab my help site. We would just paste in whatever URL you're going to use and decide how you want to open that. And then it's a new tile. We can also drag and drop these around as needed. And one other benefit from a system view is we can also create tiles and push them out to users. So if there is, like we said, if we're doing that Algebra 1 assessment, I could actually put a link to that assessment in one of the tiles. So rather than navigating which assessment, find a list, find the right one, we could say all Algebra 1 teachers have that one tile, click here, and it'll take you to where you're going to go to administer the test. So we have a lot of shortcuts we can do here and sharing out of the tiles. So it'll be your shortcuts really. Across the top, in the right-hand side, we have a dashboard. So there's a control panel, which I opened briefly. We won't spend too much time in there. It's really just signing out and different things. I will have you open it for a second though. So if you open up the control panel, that's where we switched around the sites. If we do create student groups, this is where you can say, show me just my accelerated math students. So you can make your student groups and be able to identify straight from there. This also takes you to different things like the Help Center. If you needed to email Illuminate with a question or call in, that's that information. There's also badges that you'll earn, and as you go through, you'll see little pop-ups. If you click on that View My Badges, so remember we're in the demo site right now, but you'll see here's a couple different badges that we've earned in the demo site. Here's some that we have in progress. Maybe we'll get to later on today and we'll earn a few more badges, but it is something that people will see pop up. On the dashboard, so to the left of the control panel is the dashboard. This is one option to view some of your assessment data. In a real quick view, all of these are different widgets that include live data. So you can drag and drop them around to customize what that looks like for you. And then do you see there's an add widget option where you can do things like add student birthdays and add a weather forecast. I might have all my widgets added already because we're all logged in as me. So student birthday can just be a fun one to be able to remind yourself to say happy birthday to certain students. And it looks like that one is loading. So just some basic information, and we can customize what tiles teachers will see here too. We do have, let's say if grade books end up being something you want to use in the future, this is a shortcut to looking at how are students doing overall in a grade book. It could be attendance can be imported. It could be any of your state assessment data as well. So we'll talk about, after we start to have some data in the system, how we want to customize the dashboard to make it as user-friendly for teachers. And then I want to move over to the student profile. So if you see where the student tab is at the top, go ahead and click on Students. And then we're going to go to the first one that says Search 2.0. This is one option for finding students. There are multiple options. But if you are looking at this from a broad perspective and you want to see all 10th graders that are included in, let's say, that have a special ed designation or an entry date of a certain date, this is one location where you can really filter down and find a specific group of students. So all of these will have basic information from your student information system, all the demographics for students. And again, you can pick and choose and filter. So right now, let's say I'm looking at 5th grade, and once I click search, I'll be able to see all students that I have access to in 5th grade, and that might not be the case with this. Let me double check. Let me start over, make sure we have the right students. Did anyone find students? Have we filtered you around? Did I give you the wrong demo access? Okay, give me 1 second. Logging in as the Illuminate user to make sure. All right, I'm going to share an intervention group as an in case. All right, let me make sure that this user has access to see students. Okay, if you refresh your page, you should have, if you don't select, I think we're only in Maslow right now, at least 171 students. Is that correct? Do you guys have students now? Students, search 2.0. If you just hit search after you do that, you should have a group of students. Even if you refreshed?
Yes.
You do? Okay. It probably just came up because I just changed a permission on there so you could view students. So we have one that's successful. Still not?
What I did was I went back to the control panel.
Okay.
Control panel, then all students for subgroup,
Okay.
and then save changes. And then go ahead and close that out. And not do it.
Okay. Thank you.
That was the key. So for anyone that wasn't able, going back to the control panel, and you just saved changes, right?
Yeah,
You
I
didn't
just selected
actually.
all students and just said save changes. I had to select all students.
Okay. Make sure all students. And then once you have refreshed, you should be able to see those students. Anybody else need help with that? We've got a tutor. Will you help in the back? All right, so again, this is just one option for searching for students. We could actually search for an individual student name up in the navigation bar at the top if we needed to. I like searching for, let's say in the navigation bar, you don't have to follow me, you could just watch this one. Like Liz is usually a name, and if I don't hit enter, it's going to give me any options with students with the name Liz, or if I have any help docs. So maybe I don't. Let's say I saw an Adrian in there. It'll say, here's your student list for Adrian. If I type in, let's say, the words create, it's going to take me to navigation or help docs. And if I had a student with the name create, it would also show up there as well. That's only if I don't hit enter. If I hit enter right here, it says you don't have any students with that name. So this really is a universal navigation that will help when you say, I can't remember exactly what that's called, So again, like I said, with Create, it's going to show you navigation to how to get to, let's say, assessments and then standards, or any of the help docs that go with that. So I'm going to take us back to right where we were. So one option for looking for those students. When I work with Springs Charter Schools in the Temecula area, so they have a lot of homeschool, and they said this was really useful for identifying students that had turned 18 because of the different FERPA privacy of what you can share with a parent when a student is 18 or not. And so this next piece, when you select any of the student names that you come across, so let's say I'm just picking any student name. I happen to choose Jennifer Aniston on mine. Your first view will show you their birth date, but because this is in there, I can also sort that. So I could say in any of my filters, show me any students that are, now 18, and see that contact information. We can also upload any of the student photos. So somebody has actually just uploaded some fun ones here, but this can be any of the student photos we have. If you click on the student name here, it takes you to another view that's called the student profile. So this is one report. Hopefully I didn't choose a weird demo kid. This is one report that houses everything we have on file for the student. So you'll be able to see any assessments they've taken, their schedule. So if we scroll down from here, it shows me any of my demographics that we were just seeing here. Probably a lot of, this is also going to mirror from a nightly upload from your SIS. So you won't need to upload any of this. It should be synced on a nightly basis. If yours was closed, you can open it where it says Assessments Overview. We can choose Smarter Balanced and any previous years. Oh, I happen to choose not a good kid for this. Let's try a different group. I'm going to choose Adrian. Bless you. I thought I saw Adrian earlier. Notice on this students, there is a little badge letting us know they're EL. So we have badges for English learners, for special ed, for gifted and talented if you're tracking that. If they have some health alerts, we also have badges for those. So those will just come up with some information to let you know that that's available. So here I did have a student now that I can see all of the Smarter Balanced assessment data we have for them. And this one is the overview, but we can even drill down into the question groups and see how they've done in what performance level on each question group, their schedule. This might be helpful when you have kids that do leave and come back. We'll show an exit date and then a re-entry date. So you might see, oh, they've actually been with us a few different times and gone and come back. So you will be able to see what their enrollment entry date and leave date is. And so that'll be kept track in here as well. You see with some of that information here, it's showing for this kid under the enrollment history. contact information if we need it, and we get down to looking at assessments. So this is one area. If you're looking by student, and we can even drill in and say, show me exactly what they did on the assessment from this piece. And I'm actually going to just go back to my student profile. And resume where we were. A couple other pieces. We do have the option to turn on or off a lot of these widgets too. I do have a couple districts that take use of the comments area quite a bit. So this is one where it could be a teacher comment on a student record. Everybody that has access to the student would see those comments. So keep in mind that that would be more of a public piece, but it is one nice area if you just had a note that you wanted to let another teacher know. And then any of the other data that we have on the students, you'd also be able to see if we're pulling that in. And really, I wanted to drill down to the assessment standard progress for this student. It doesn't look like we have any data on, so I'm going to take you to back to the agenda. I have, under basic navigation, we've gone through the tiles, the dashboard. Here's the student demographics and student profile. If you wanted to look at that, that'll explain each and every widget. But I wanted to highlight one that has some data in there. This assessment standard progress widget, once you start to collect quite a bit of data, for every item, so this standard was tested 4 times, it'll start to collect the data over time. How did the student do? Have they mastered this standard or not? And what's the trend? So as they take assessments, it's going to collect the data on any questions that are on MA 5.5. Did they get it correct or incorrect? And how have we done over time? And so you'll be able to also drill into those and identify, well, which tests were those on? So if we are talking about, mastery of certain standards, this is one location that you could find per student. That information, we can also see it in other reports for the whole class. So that was the link on the agenda, just to give you, when you get back into looking at your student profiles, when we have all of your demographics in and you say, what's supposed to be here? What data should I see here? Or sometimes we haven't turned something on that you want to use. We can go in and turn on that widget. So we might minimize it first because it can be overwhelming, as you saw, too much data. Especially if we're not collecting it, we won't display it. So we won't have some of those turned on initially for yours until we start to have some data to display. Any questions on some of the basic navigation? Yes?
Do we have the ability to standardize some of the things on that profile?
Yes. So we have the ability to lock the widgets, so if we want them in a specific order, but definitely turn on or off. So mostly we'll start with a smaller list of what's turned on and gradually add as it makes more sense. Yes, because right now you won't have a lot of that data. It wouldn't be worth seeing that. So definitely customizable. So let's dig into now looking at a couple of the pre-built reports, and then I want to dig into showing you one other way that you can create the assessments. So back to our logo will take us back to our tiles page. So let's go back to our tiles page for now. And in this, we want to go to the purple tile that says View Reports. This reports page gives you a snapshot, and it's basically, there's a lot of filters over in the options on the left-hand side. It'll give you a little picture of, is this little icon, is this the report I'm looking for that has this information? Anytime it says assessment, that's based on the local assessment, most likely. So we want to look at some of the pre-built assessments. So in your options on the left-hand side, click on pre-built. You also have the option for the audience. So most of the time, you're not going to use this, but sometimes you'll say, I want to look at a report that's specific to a parent. You can select parent and be able to view the reports that way. Different categories. What we're looking for are assessments for the state. I can also just type in SBAC, Smarter Balanced Assessments. But for this one, I was showing you the different options. So once I've drilled down, you'll see I have quite a few. Any of these that say preliminary, it's the results we have before all the student results are in. They usually release a little bit. I think it's like 95% of the students, and then we wait for the final summary results. So we probably want to stay away from the preliminary for now. We'll just look at the finals. And the one I'm going to ask you to choose is the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and it's the student report. For mine, it's the first one up on the screen. If you click on the image, it's going to take you to the report. If you click down below where it says preview, so let me show you that again. When you're getting used to these reports, if you click preview, it'll give you the bigger image to say, is this what I'm looking for? And there is an option to go out to the help docs to give you more information if needed, or to run the report. So this is called our student scope selector, and you'll see it in any report you create. If you're creating it for your school site, you would stay at the site level. If you want to create it for one teacher or one class, let's say you're looking at, again, one class, not kindergartners, obviously, have taken the Smarter Balanced, filter by individual students. You also have additional filters underneath for anything like different student programs. So as we start to disaggregate our data, this will probably be much more useful, right? As we're identifying, show me long-term English learners that have taken the Smarter Balanced, and let's see which target areas they need assistance with. So I'm going to close the additional filters because I don't want to use that now. If you scroll down to where it says SBA academic years, we don't have any data for 17-18 yet. So we need to choose 16-17. And we can do ELA math or ELA and math. I'm going to show you both of those. I'm going to start with ELA and math, summative. And I'm going to leave what they have as the defaults for comprehensive, no previous, and English as the language, but we can also print it in Spanish. And then view that in the browser. Depending on the number of students, sometimes this might take a minute. But this can be one of those reports you send home, or have that student discussion. If we have the data as soon after they enroll, we could have that discussion of here's where you fell on the last assessment, here's some areas that we think we need to work on. So here's my first student that came up. you'll see the performance across the top, where they scored. The state has been reporting the distance from level 3, so we also report that. Where they fell in each of those targets. And this particular one shows ELA and math on the same report. And it's 1 per student. And if we print this in Spanish, it's basically all of the same information, but available for them to read in Spanish. Any questions on this one?
So is this all basically from data that they get pulled from our student information system, and then this will allow us to like look at it and?
It'll be, yes. The CASP files actually come from the state instead of the student information system.
Our CAS files into here straight from the state.
Exactly. It's an upload as soon as you have them from the state. And so, we can upload as many previous years as there are that we have that data for, so we can do some of that comparative if we have any students that stayed around and we have multiple years for. We can also do some cohorts and some pivot tables. So exactly, this is all of the CASP information directly from the state, which you guys might have as you have students enroll. We might need to add students as they come. Now, another option here, if you choose just one subject area, let's say ELA, and include previous years, just different, you have a lot of options in most of the reports of how you would like to view the data. So this one will give some growth information if they have previous data. It looks like this particular student doesn't. Let's see if I have any others. Here I do have one that has their 4th grade score and then how they scored as a 6th grade student. Or sorry, how they scored on 5th grade and they're currently a 6th grade student. So a little more detail within that. You can also group students by site or grade level or teacher or section. So hopefully you're seeing kind of a lot of the different tools. You're not locked into one view. You can just determine how you want to view the data and disaggregate it. So that's from the student view. If we go back to view reports, and there's a few different ways to get there. I just went to the link at the top that said view reports. If you end up all the way back at your tiles page, it's the view reports again. There's also the reports tab at the top. So the next one I want to show you, and if you just type in SBA, this is another option for seeing all the pre-builts. So the first time I sorted in the options menu. This time I want to go to I don't want to do the preliminary. I want to do the student roster. Let's see. Smarter Balanced Assessment student roster, not the one that says preliminary. I'll just give you, as you see, there's about 5 different reports we can see. I'm going to filter this down to, let's say, 6th grade. So this might be a report that we start the year off with when you know, or even your semester with when you have students, new students, that we say, okay, well, let's see where they were on their proficiency level and where they were in each of those performance areas. How did they do in reading, writing, listening, and research and inquiry? And then from the larger perspective, so I'll just show you one more of these. Going to go to the performance summary. So depending on your workflow, you might start here and drill into the students, or start with the student and drill back out. But this is showing us for all grade levels how many students met 3 and a 4, right? So they're at that goal level of a 3 or above. And students that did not meet, and where are we in the claim performance? So this is a good kind of big picture view of how did we do overall. And then we can drill down to grade level and site and looking at the individual performance. Yeah, question?
I just came across the SBA and NWEA. What is that one?
So we can do a multiple assessment report as well. And that one happens to be one of the multiple. So if you are giving NWEA assessment, map assessments, we can upload that data, and we have other reports for those. And then you can do comparison. So if I go back, and let's look at that one. I'm not positive we have the NWEA in here. Let's see. Oh, that one was a custom report that somebody did. If we go to I'm going to look at a multiple assessment performance report. And we have a few, so let me pick which one. And you guys won't have all of these. Again, kind of keep in mind that you're in a demo site, so we have everything turned on. So you might see some non-California reports in here also. We'll make sure that those aren't on for you. So let's see, multiple assessment. Multiple assessment performance report with optional Smarter Balanced and CELT. So this probably is one that we're going to want to go to later on when we have some local assessment data. So we can say, show us the Smarter Balanced, show us the CELT, and then show us and I'm taking a shot at in the dark. This one, let's see, maybe we have some for your fake students that you did. So we can add as many of our local assessments on here and then show and again, that might not be the best view, but you'll get an idea. Should have sorted down by student. But here's the idea of this one. If you have data for the assessment results that you just gave, plus I chose to include my Smarter Balance for ELA and math and CELT scores if they had it, and you can have multiple performance, multiple assessments in here as well. So see that big scope of doing that correlation. How are they doing on our assessments versus how they did on Smarter Balanced. There's also a pivot report. That one's only 2, but you can say, how did we do on Smarter Balanced versus our assessment? And which students were both 3s, both 1s, so we can kind of correlate some of that information as well. All right, one more report, and then I'm going to dig back into giving assessments. So back to view reports. If you type in CELT, which will soon turn into LPAC, right, once we have that data, we have quite a few different CELT reports. The 2 that you'll probably use the most are the student list and the longitudinal roster. So I'll just show you the longitudinal roster. And I'm going to filter by a grade level just to narrow that down. But hopefully you see how this scope selector, you will be able to use that tool quite a bit when you're looking at different groups. From the teacher perspective, they're not going to need to drill down because their students are already going to be loaded in there, so they'll have one less step. So here's a longitudinal roster where we can see basically as many years as we have CELT data for. So that's another file we can now just get from the state and upload for as many years as we have data on those students. And you'll see this one has 3 years, how did they do in overall, and each of their domains. So for those long-term English learners, this would also be a good kind of tracking mechanism to see who's in our classes. A wealth of reports, right? Too many reports. But again, so keep in mind, we're going to target what we look at, and it's going to be by time of year that we look at it. But hopefully you're seeing there are pretty much any way you want to see the data. We either have a pre-built or we have ways that we can custom build reports. So start thinking about how you do want to see that data, and then we can guide what that discussion looks like. If, for instance, this was a report that you wanted all of your staff to look at a certain time of the year, we can mark it as a favorite, and once it's marked in the favorite, and we can also push some of these out as well, then when I am back on my tiles page and I look at favorites, I can be directed to district favorites and my own favorites. So we do have some shortcuts that we don't need teachers to navigate and search every possible report. We can guide what that looks like. Here's the 3 we're looking at now, maybe 2 or 3 that are the assessment reports, and then 2 or 3 of the state reports, and here's the information on those. So we have not only tiles, but also favorites is one other way to categorize that. All right. Ready to switch gears a little bit?
Question.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying then that the NWEA would have to be added into like a custom report if we wanted to see SBAC, NWEA, and also results of Illuminate assessment?
We do have NWEA specific reports. I just don't know that they're in this demo site. Let me see if I have one in here. Here's a couple that are just for that. You would do the assessment, the multiple assessment, and we would just add that as an assessment. Basically, that would be one that we could add in there. So here's a test year. Again, I'm shot in the dark with the demo year sometimes. I don't have multiple years, so maybe it's not going to let me.
Comparison, would that compare to Summer Balance, or would that compare to something else?
For a comparison report, you get to pick and
There's a
choose.
field on that one where it was an NWEA report and then it said include comparison. I was just curious what it could compare.
Let me go back to that. Which one were you looking at? This one?
What were we just in?
I know. The student roster?
Or no, student report.
I think we were in the student report. That one is comparing multiple NWEAs in the student report. But again, I think we have these reports loaded, but I don't think we have any data in this demo site on NWEA. But I have a few districts that are, oh, I guess we do have a little bit. So we have, I want to say it's 5 pre-built reports that are similar to this for NWEA, but once that data is in there, you can either do custom reports with it, so we could upload it to see side by side, or add it to the multiple assessment report. Yeah?
Would it be possible to have access to like all the reports that's been created elsewhere?
Yes. So a couple different ways we can do that. We have something called Z Library, where if you know what you're looking for, we can see if it's already been shared to be installed. The other option is we have something coming out called Illuminate IQ, where it is basically a crowdsourcing of custom reports that other people have done and built to look similar to our pre-builts, but that you say, this is great, we also want to use it. So that is actually coming in spring. So it's pretty close around the corner. And I'm actually seeing in this demo site that it's showing up here. I haven't really tested it much in our demo, so you can play around with it too and see. It's, again, it's still in the baby phase, it's not launched yet, but that's the goal of, yeah, why not use the wealth of everybody else's put this stuff together, be able to use that.
And in the meantime, can we still access this demo one?
Yes, I won't take it away from you. Yes. So let's do one last piece and then we'll get into some kind of broader picture. So I want to do something, kind of change gears altogether from that test we just did. So the test we just did was all based online. That might be where you're going with your district assessments on the whole. And then that flexibility of, as sites, per teacher maybe, how do we want to also maybe capture some of that basic day-to-day information? And there's a few different ways to do it with plain paper scanning. So I want to show you, I might change users real quick. And here's a little trick. If you are a Mac, it's Command K, and if you are a PC, it's Control K. It's something we call Quick Switcher. And so you probably see this pop up a lot. I'm just hitting Command K. It might be something you use, maybe not. I'm always switching users, so it's helpful for me. So in this one, I'm actually going to create an assessment, and you can just watch me if you want, and then I'm going to have you take it on a scan form just so you can experience that and show you how it can also be given as a hybrid. So I'm going to go into assessments, and I also have shortcuts here. So create an assessment on the fly, and if we have time, we can do that one, but it's basically a very quick check for understanding. Manual hybrid is the one I'm going to do right now, where it's just a basic answer key, but we can also upload the PDF and have it as an online test. Skills assessments is really meant for correct, incorrect, like primary, kindergarten letter names, things like that. Item bank is where we're spending quite a bit of our day tomorrow, building assessments and looking there. So I wanted to show you just the other option. I'm going to say it's a 5-question quiz. And then give you just a sample hybrid. And you can include things like a description and more options. This would be really for the test creators, spending time thinking about how we want to locate it later. The more information you have, the better, but we don't actually have to. It's not required in here. Normally we want to select standards, but I'm going to show you just an option within this. We have 5 questions, the correct answers for them, and I'm going to show you my test real quick. I am doing a data interpretation skills. So here's a basic, let's say I have this, I have lessons that I use on a daily basis, it's already in my PDF. I have 4 questions that are multiple choice and 1 that is a constructed response. And this would, if I wrote it as an item, this would be my passage, right? I have to refer back to that piece. So I'm going to basically make up, these are the correct and incorrect answers. The 5th one was a constructed response, and I'm going to give it 1 point. I can identify question groups, so I could, in those question groups, I could put more information like we said, number in base 10, or it's, that would already be something we would have information from the standards. I could even do something like this question came from a homework example we gave, or a public speaker, and I want to see if they remember the information from the speaker. So basically anything you'd want to see in the report. And then if I want to attach any materials, which I do, so here I've got my data interpretation materials. The sheet designer allows you to just identify what is this going to look like on my answer sheet. And I'm going to, this one only has 4 responses on my PDF instead of 5. I can also, in my rubric, so let me give you this example here. If I go out and print this, so I'm going to, if I go out and print it as is, it's going to show you the answer sheet, and I printed a blank, super basic. The teacher has to do the scoring, so this is kind of the old school way. With this lightning grader option, what you have, let me go back into my sheet designer. What you have is the option to give them the possibility of writing on the page, and it's going to take a picture of what you scan in, so you'll be able to score the picture on the computer instead. So let's say that was a short answer. Let's go back to printing my answer sheets. Let's say I do them pre-slugged. And I do have some additional options here where I can say what size bubbles, how many per page, a lot of different tools. And I might have drilled down a little bit further there. But here's another option for the answer sheets. So here, answer, and then write in, because you have your scan form, right? It's going to take a picture of what that looks like. So right now, I actually want to have you do it. And then I'll have you bring it up and scan it in so we can just see what that looks like. Do I have any volunteers for handing these out? Do you want to grab a couple? So put in your answer choices. And let me hook up the scanner real quick. And let me pull up my scanning to show you what that'll look like. So write something in there that's, draw a smiley face, just anything that we're going to be able to see on the constructed response. All right, so I'm just going to set this up in front of you so you see what I'm doing. These are also those shortcut tiles we can do. So if I say grade this from a scanner, it's going to say, what camera do you want to use? I only see this camera here for me now, and I haven't scored this, but I can use this, and it's going to take an image of my answer sheet. If the student hadn't selected, I could select for them, or I'm going to hook up an external camera, which it's pretty much any camera, and it's just plain paper scanning. So I want to show you what that looks like to do that. Let's make sure it's going to see my scanner. So now I've got, and I basically just have a plain box, and you don't need it, but it's just a little bit easier for them. So any volunteer want to pick them up and come bring them up for me? Let's do some scanning. I needed to bring prizes. All right. Would you actually drop them in for me? I know. I need to find a prize for you. Wait, hold on one second. All right, let's make sure it's in there. It doesn't matter, actually. And they can all be different. Let's see. So as an idea, and I'm going to turn on the volume here real quick so you can see what that sounds like. Oh, I don't need volume, it's not that big a deal. So you can do it a couple different ways. Either they come up and they just hand theirs in, or as a teacher, you can just take them out and you see it's just taking a picture. So that's the teacher view. You can also do a student view. So as they come in and they brought their homework in for the day, and of course your lighting, you might want to make sure you have brighter light right there. So this is the student view. So let's say it's homework and they brought in a quick little sheet. It's giving you your scores. If you didn't score anything, it's going to ask me what to do next. So pretty basic and easy. Oops, didn't like that either. And then once I save and view my results, so I've got a quick little view here. It reminds me you need to score, but I can also do save and view results right away to see what we've scored and where we need help. The enter edit is very similar to what we saw before for online assessment. But this one you're going to see basically a photo of each of those constructed response. So let me do it by question. Question 5. And I've used these students a couple times, so when you see different versions, each monkey requires chocolate and cookies. That might have been a different version. And it's taken a picture of what you have. Now, it probably would have been a little better if I was a little bit closer or not blocking some of the light, but you'll see how you can easily go in and be able to score those. These can also be printed on a grid, so if you're doing like a graphing item, you could have them do a graphing item and then see that photo basically of the graphing item and then score them. If we wanted to give the same test online, I uploaded the materials and I can go in and preview what that looks like. And now they're going to have the PDF on one side and their multiple choice and their constructed response. So you'll probably use this a whole lot more, but if you needed to, that is an option in the scanning and it'll all go to the same place. So pretty basic and kind of easy to use, right? Were you guys talking about the scanning, those of you that have used it before? So, and what was your feedback that you guys were saying?
When I taught 5th grade, I used to actually have the kids scan their own. I would set up the student side of it, and they really enjoyed the scanning. Whenever I did the constructed response, because we weren't a fully digital school yet, we were still trying to grow to that, I would print and would hand score them, but I wouldn't give them the box. I would have them write it on like the test sheet, and then I would bubble in the...
And it probably wasn't available then.
No.
So, yeah, it's newer.
I don't remember if it was, to be honest.
It's newer technology, so I think it just this year it became that you could physically write on the sheet, so very cool. Yeah, the students enjoy that. The on-the-fly scoring also, that's something we'll talk about later on in another date, but just to kind of give you a couple different ideas of how we could collect some data, whether it's, very basic day-to-day check for understanding versus the, summative assessment at the end of a course. We have lots of different options. And then all of the reports. So as soon as I'm done with all of that information, we touched on the overview report. with that other test we did, but we didn't go into looking at all of the other, there's 23 pre-built reports for each assessment you give. That includes things like parent letters. You can look at it by site, by teacher, by individual group, by response frequency. So you have a lot of different tools that we'll kind of dig into. And I have just did in Fillmore, which isn't too far from here, an administrator training last week where we identified 3 of these 23 that we're going to use and kind of as a starting point to really get into thinking how everybody's speaking the same language. So know that you can dig as deep as you want to dig, but you can also say, okay, we're going to look at response frequency, which question gave us the most trouble, and where do we go from there? So before we completely end, I want to come back to our agenda and just leave you with a couple of the options that kind of show you what was in here again. Any of these links will take you to some of the reports that we covered in the help docs. We didn't go deep into the local assessment reports, but here's a couple. We looked at the overview. The response frequency and the matrix report are some that we'll get into once we start looking at our local data, and that's probably when we'll dig into those reports, is when we actually have some of our own data to view. And I went into manual hybrid assessments just now. That was called the manual or hybrid assessment. The item bank assessments, I'm working with the assessment team tomorrow, and we're going to dig mainly into just that. And then in this PowerPoint piece that you also have a link to, I just put a few more examples of different things that are available, like custom reports, just some screenshots if you were wondering some of the things that we wanted to see data for. So nothing too much that you needed to keep track of, but here is a thought. Speaking of track, we do have an early warning system that you guys can customize however you want. So it could be the student has this many absences and this many credits and is doing this on their assessment. We want to make sure that we're monitoring them different. So we can basically, any data set you have in the system, we can customize a warning system to say, oh yeah, this student needs to be monitored a little closer. So we have a lot of different tools available.
Did you say you can set the parameters for what targets them? So if we
Yeah.
want to look at like our bubble kids or whatever that we wanted to focus on for
Exactly. And you can customize all the naming for it too. So they don't, like this one happens to show a math interim assessment, a state assessment. They don't have any, they have some attendance, but they don't have any other information in there. If you're uploading information like behavior or different things, we could also include that. So, and then each of those categories can be customized. So let me take you back to, again, one more time the agenda. If you scroll to the top where it says learnforlife.illuminateed.com, I think Summer has created accounts for everyone in here. So, first initial, last name, and then Learn for Life, L4L 2018 would be your password. I believe that's what we set it for. And so that's your login right now, where keep in mind we don't have students in there yet, and we're still customizing around some of what appears, but you can already start to kind of dig around a little bit. When you go to student list. It's not an error that you don't see students. We're still getting those imported. But you could start to do things, play around with the creating assessments, anything like that, and we'll be turning on and off different things depending on what we decide we're going to roll out with. Do you guys have any questions for me? L4L 2018. Capital L's. So of what we did this morning, what is most important that I show the afternoon, do you guys feel? As we're doing our, what are you guys coming away with, I guess is what I want to ask. Do you feel like you have kind of a grasp of what Illuminate has to offer? Started the wheels turning maybe? I mean, really that's our goal. Not that you go dig into anything, but kind of starting to think about once we have assessments. Hopefully you got your feet wet a little bit about what the student experience might be like. And then what do you think starting with the student assessment would also be good for the afternoon group to kind of see it from that perspective?
I think it's a good like overview of everything, but the data reports, that's going to be like key for
Okay.
that's what I'm really want to look at.
Okay.
Looking at the standards and looking at students have met the goal and
Mhm.
also met the goal. So
Okay.
especially looking at custom reports since we're such a unique
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, and that's where I want to kind of tailor it to you guys because you do have, right, in the demo site we're really looking at the traditional structure.
Right.
And so you guys probably are going to choose different reporting.
Right. Parameters of the dates because the students
Mhm.
won't be taking the tests all at the same time. It's when
Right.
they do their work. So yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind too as we're planning rollout and when I'm going over it with Summer and Chris and the assessments team of keep in mind, ask the questions. Like if I want to know if this data and this data and this data already has a pre-built report, ask the question because we might have it. Or like you were asking, like we might have a district that already built it. So before you think you need to do all the work, like let us know and we can figure that out because yeah, timing is going to be different for you guys on when you give those. And some of those like very custom reports, and we can have a whole day on the custom report training where we can pick and choose every element that goes into that. But again, just kind of getting your feet wet of lots of different tools. Don't get overwhelmed. We'll plan it in smaller chunks and we'll roll it out in smaller chunks too. All right, well, I think we're done. And everyone got logged in okay? All right. Yes, question.
I didn't get a chance to ask while you were doing it. When you're taking the pictures through the scanner,
Mm-hmm.
will students be able to use like their phone or like any camera?
Not yet on the phone, shortly. We almost had it like launched until the Apple meltdown. And so we're waiting for that patch, but camera scanning from the mobile scanning will be available too.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. We're at the mercy sometimes of other software too.
The last thing you want is to have all your stuff everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Student ID, every bit of your information, birth date. So definitely. All right, thank you guys. I will see you again.